From selling energy drinks that no one will ever buy, to Mark Cuban exiting the show, these are the most savage Shark Tank rejections. When talking about the wackiest of pitches on the hit show, no one can forget about Season 3's Cougar Limited. Ryan Custer's $150,000 idea was an energy drink for a very specific demographic, and yes, the name says it all. Custer offered 30% equity for a drink for cougars only. An apprentice/model/girlfriend was sitting there to demonstrate how good the product was. The beverage was hinged on the idea that the term cougar would be the selling point, since back in 2012, it was a pretty popular term. I don't think Ryan put much thought into it because as of 2024, I don't know a single person who still uses that word. The Sharks' reactions were obviously negative. Damon John wasn't impressed by the sales, and Barbara Corcoran found the taste of the drink similar to chalk. Kevin O'Leary thought the energy drink market was way too competitive, and Robert Herjavec called it an overvalued gag gift. Man, imagine someone calling your 3 years' worth of hard work a gag gift. Well, the years of work were unimpressive to the Sharks too, because he made $60,000 worth of sales in 3 years. On top of that, Custer's definition of the word cougar was inaccurate, saying that it categorized middle-aged women of ages 35 to 50. The Sharks pointed out that this was the wrong meaning of the word, which made this drink much worse. Where is the drink today? Keep watching to find out, because now I've got to tell you about Esso watches. Remember those rubber watches that claim to keep your balance with the help of some science mumbo-jumbo? Yeah, well, Ryan Naylor came up with one with a very creative way to call it a defense mechanism. According to him, we're exposed to positive ions from screens and lights every day, and his Esso watches had negative ions embedded into them when melting the silicon during production. These negative ions would neutralize the positive ions from the environment. And honestly, if one of the Sharks paid attention to chemistry class, they'd laugh harder than they already were. His explanation was met with smirks and side eyes and an unamused look when he asked for $35,000 in exchange for a 20% stake in his business, which was a $175,000 valuation. To defend the preposterous idea, Naylor claimed he sold around $120,000 in watches within a month from an investment of just $10,000, earning him $70,000 in profit. Now these numbers were pretty questionable, and the fact that Naylor used his expertise in search engine optimization for Esso to rank high up in the results just didn't move the Sharks. The fun part was when he invited Lori Greiner up to put the watch to the test, where she tried balancing on one leg first, then without the watch on. Turns out the balance thing worked, and so he handed an Esso to each Shark in front of him up until Mark Cuban kindly declined the watch. Why? Well, Cuban said he's allergic to scams, and the Esso watch was nothing far from it. Mark said that this was just a placebo effect, and the whole ion theory had been disproven and lacked evidence. Speaking of, Lori also asked Naylor if he had any independent laboratory testing done on the product, to which he responded with a shy no. Damon, on the other hand, accused Ryan of having a similar design to his investment called Rumba Time. Naylor stood tall, claiming that the watch was helping him keep his cool, but after O'Leary didn't move forward with the product, he was sent home embarrassed and investment-less. Next up, we have the infamous protein and fat-blocking bars, minus Cal. Despite the large age gap, Crom Carmichael and Barrett Jacques used their minds to come up with a product that would help Americans lose weight. Now, their presentation was pretty entertaining, and many viewers thought this was a shoo-in. The slight setback was that they were asking for $500,000 with a 20% equity stake, but the fun little demonstration of their ingredient, called Choleve blocking fats from the body, neutralized the tension in the air. Unfortunately, trouble started as soon as they tasted the samples, with Robert pointing out how it didn't taste that great. Guest judge Daniel Lubetsky was skeptical about the Choleve ingredient, to which Crom replied that it was an active ingredient found in green tea. So they took the molecule and maximized its potency 20 times, and they had all the statistics from scientists and universities to prove that their product was legit. Cuban, who's basically Simon Cowell of Shark Tank, questioned the brand's goal of taking away 100 calories by eating just 2 pills. The product's name itself contradicted what the bar was scientifically capable of doing, and after saying that the ingredient was just air, oh boy, all hell broke loose. Crom and Cuban were at an all-out war, while poor Barrett was standing awkwardly, hoping this would all be over soon. It was clear that Crom couldn't back up the brand because, in the end, Robert gave Mark a lecture on letting people talk, but still backing out of an investment. O'Leary's gripe with Minuscal was the huge amount of money they were asking for, but when it was time to go, Crom tried defending his bar one more time. Unfortunately, he embarrassed himself even more by claiming that the product wouldn't help him lose weight while standing in front of a sign that said, "Lose weight." So after all the arguments and wars, how are these three doing in the market? Well, Cougar Limited is no more. If you take a look at Custer's website, it's renamed Custer Creations, and apparently he's now a realtor in Dallas, Texas. Luckily, Ryan was able to stand on his 2 feet after the 3rd season of the show. The guy behind SO Watches, on the other hand, struggled a lot more. The watches obviously went out of business, but in a podcast, Naylor claimed that the showrunners told him to emphasize the science behind the watches because he was being used as a setup to boost ratings. Apparently, Shark Tank was at risk of losing viewership, so they needed something as ridiculous as negative ion-generating watches to keep it entertaining. After Mark called Naylor a scam, people found his personal details, like his address and phone number, and bullied him online. His wife had to take down a blog post because of all the trolls, but that wasn't all. Naylor was facing 4 lawsuits, 3 of which were because of health damage from the watches. These cases were disproven because Naylor never shipped it to the location of the complaints, but the 4th lawsuit was from ExxonMobil, who claimed that they owned the ESSO trademark. Naylor lost the case and is now channeling his entrepreneurial skills into developing Viva HR, a recruiting software that broadcasts employment for businesses with a better user experience. As for the 2 fat fighters, Minuscal ran out of business, though one product is still up on Amazon. Crom is the CEO of Nashai Biotech, which develops health products. Barrett is the CEO of Shield Health, which is a consultancy that improves patients who are regularly going to the doctor. It looks like the backlash didn't have these guys suffering too much, but the question is, what were the fans' reactions? And did this affect the Shark Tank in any way? Well, everyone agreed on the scams. Take the ESSO watch, for example. You remember when he tested the balance theory on Lori, right? Well, people think that in the first test, Naylor purposely imbalanced her and asked her to regain composure in a few seconds. In the second test, she took her time to balance herself after putting the watch on, which is a textbook scam technique. The before and after effect of deliberately lowering someone's guard and giving them time to go back to normal while trying the product. As for the Robert and Mark feud during the Minuscal presentation, fans appreciated Rob's being so professional about his colleagues' attitude. After all, it really does take a lot of time and effort to come up on the Shark Tank stage. After the 11th season, I honestly can't tell if Cuban has improved or not. Maybe Herjavec's words got to him. But it doesn't really matter since Mark is leaving Shark Tank after the 16th season that'll air in 2025. Is it because of the terrible pitches he has to sit through each episode? Well, not really. Mark wants to spend time with his 2 daughters before they're off adulting in the real world. Plus, there's plenty of room for other sharks to tear down every entrepreneur's dreams. One thing's for sure. I don't think we'll have someone calling an aspiring businessman a scam to his face. And so, from Mark Cuban exiting the show to selling energy drinks that no one will ever buy. Those were the most savage Shark Tank rejections.